In a small town where change seemed impossible, one woman walked into a classroom and began a quiet revolution. She wasn't just any teacher, she was a Black woman whose impact reached far beyond the walls of her school. Her name is often overlooked in history, but her influence shaped the future of this town in ways most never saw coming. What drove her to defy the odds, and how did her presence spark something deeper within the community? As we dig into her story, we'll uncover untold moments that challenged minds and broke barriers. Her legacy is hidden in plain sight, but it's a story that needs to be told. Stay with us as we explore the unforgettable impact of a Black teacher who changed the course of an entire town's history. What did she face? And how did her fight leave a mark that still echoes today? Her name was Ms. Williams, and when she first arrived in town, many had their doubts. The community had always been divided. Old traditions and deep-seated prejudices made change feel like a distant dream. Yet, Ms. Williams walked into that classroom with a quiet determination. She didn't try to force her way into the lives of the children. Instead, she listened, understood, and subtly began weaving lessons of self-worth and unity into every subject she taught. She became more than just a teacher. She became a guide, a mentor, and for some, a lifeline. But not everyone appreciated her methods. Whispers started in the town's corners. People questioned her teaching style, and rumors spread about her influence on the kids. What were they really learning? Was she challenging more than just the textbooks? As the weeks passed, her impact grew, and so did the resistance. Who was truly threatened by her presence, and why? As Ms. Williams' influence grew, so did the division in town. On one side, there were parents who saw the change in their children. Kids who had been quiet or disconnected suddenly became more confident, speaking up in class and showing a deeper curiosity about the world around them. They were no longer afraid to ask questions, even about things that were once considered taboo. On the other side, there were voices of concern, people who saw her methods as a disruption. Why are they talking about race and history this way? Some asked, others wondering why Ms. Williams didn't just stick to the curriculum. It wasn't just the students who were questioning things now. The local school board was beginning to take notice. In hushed meetings, a few influential figures began to plot. They feared that Ms. Williams' approach was challenging their authority, pushing the community to rethink its values and history. They saw her as a threat to their control, and whispers about removing her began circulating. Meanwhile, some students, sensing the tension, began to question their own place in the town's future. Was the change Ms. Williams had brought worth the risk? And if she left, what would become of their newfound voices? While the adults fought behind closed doors, the children were left with the weight of the conflict, and the knowledge that something bigger was at stake. But what exactly? Only time would reveal how deep the impact of a single teacher's legacy could go. The tension in the town was palpable. As the whispers about Ms. Williams spread, the walls seemed to close in on her. The school board, under pressure from some community leaders, started questioning her every move, demanding reports on her lessons, and even asking the students for feedback. The once peaceful classrooms had turned into a battlefield. Students who had once thrived under her guidance now found themselves torn between loyalty and fear. Parents who had once supported her were growing uncertain as the pressure from the town's influential figures intensified. One day after school, a group of students stayed behind. They gathered in secret, unsure of what to do. They had witnessed the change in their classmates. Some had gone from shy and reserved to outspoken and passionate. But they also saw the fear in Ms. Williams' eyes during the last staff meeting. She was beginning to crack under the weight of the constant scrutiny. What happens if they get rid of her? One of the students asked, her voice trembling. It wasn't just a question, it was a plea. The kids were terrified, not of the adults who had their say in the town, but of losing the only teacher who believed in them. They had come to rely on Ms. Williams for more than just lessons. She had shown them a path to a different future, one where they didn't have to stay silent. The day before the school board was scheduled to make their decision, Ms. Williams made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the town. She was considering leaving. She hadn't made up her mind yet, but the pressure was becoming too much. Her words hung in the air, leaving her students with a gnawing sense of impending loss. They knew that whatever happened next, their lives and the town would never be the same. As the clock ticked toward the school board meeting, every conversation, every glance seemed to carry the weight of the unknown. Would the town stand behind the change she had started, or would they silence her and everything she had ignited for good? The day before the meeting, something unexpected happened that no one saw coming. Late in the evening, a letter was left at the school's front door, addressed to Ms. Williams. It wasn't signed, but the contents were clear and chilling. The letter warned her to leave town, or else the consequences would be dire. The message was vague, but the threat was undeniable. Someone in the community was ready to take matters into their own hands. It was no longer just about the school board or public opinion. It had escalated into something far more personal. The next morning, Ms. Williams stood in front of her class, trying to keep her composure. Her students could sense something was off. She had always been strong, unshaken by the whispers or the challenges she faced, but today she seemed distant. Her eyes, usually filled with warmth and encouragement, were clouded with concern. The letter had shaken her more than she'd let on. Yet, she pushed forward, continuing to teach as if nothing had changed. But the students, too, could feel the weight of the threat pressing down on them. One of the more outspoken students, Jamal, decided it was time to take action. He called an impromptu meeting that afternoon, inviting those who had supported Ms. Williams and those who had been too scared to speak up before. Word spread quickly. This was no longer just about standing up for a teacher. It was about standing up for what was right. The plan was simple: gather at the school board meeting the next day, show their support, and make sure their voices were heard. But just as they prepared, another unexpected twist threw everything into chaos. News broke that the school board had already made its decision. They were no longer going to wait until the meeting. A vote had taken place behind closed doors, and Ms. Williams' future had already been sealed. She was being let go, effective immediately. It was the final blow. The students were stunned. What had they been fighting for if the decision had already been made? The town had taken its side, and now they had to face the consequences of their silence. But what Ms. Williams didn't know was that this final act of resistance was only just beginning. Her students, now more determined than ever, were about to take matters into their own hands in a way that no one expected. Would they risk everything to change the outcome, or would this be the end of an era? The clock was ticking, and the stakes had never been higher. The next day, the school board meeting room was packed. The air was thick with tension as parents, board members, and students filed in, their eyes filled with uncertainty. Jamal stood at the front, flanked by his friends and a group of students who had vowed to stand with Ms. Williams. They had expected a fight, but what came next was something none of them could have prepared for. As the meeting began, the board members, cold and detached, went through the motions, giving their speeches about standards, curriculum, and community needs. But just as the vote was about to be called, Jamal stood up, his voice cutting through the room. "We're not just here for Ms. Williams. We're here because we believe in something more than just rules. We believe in the future." For a moment, there was silence. Then, in a quiet yet powerful move, other students joined him, standing together, united for the first time, not as kids, but as agents of change. The board was taken aback, unsure of how to respond. It wasn't just their words anymore. It was the courage behind them that made all the difference. Just as the tension reached its peak, an unexpected figure walked into the room, Ms. Williams. The door swung open, and there she stood, calm but resolute, her presence radiating strength. The room gasped as she made her way to the front. She didn't have to say a word. Her mere presence was a statement. "Thank you," she said, looking at the students who had rallied behind her. "But this is bigger than me. It's about all of us." With those words, the room was silenced, and the board, shaken by the power of the united front, hesitated. It was then that the final twist came. An older man, Someone who had remained quiet throughout the meeting stood up. He was a long-time town resident, one who had supported the board's decisions for years. But today, he wasn't speaking for the board. He was speaking for the town's future. "I've seen the change she's made," he said, his voice wavering with emotion. "And I won't stand by and let you take that away." The room erupted. The vote was overturned. Miss Williams wasn't fired. In that moment, the town, for all its division, had begun to heal. But as the crowd began to disperse, Jamal noticed something strange. In the back of the room, a shadow lingered. Someone he had never seen before, watching intently. They made no move, said nothing, just watched. Who were they? And what did they know? As the town celebrated, that final question hung in the air, a reminder that even in victory, not all stories are fully told. In the days that followed, the town slowly began to change. Miss Williams, once a lone voice in the classroom, now had the unwavering support of her students and many parents. The school board, though reluctantly, acknowledged the power of unity, and it became clear that the town's future was not defined by old fears, but by a collective desire for progress. Jamal, once unsure of his place in the world, now stood taller, his voice stronger, knowing that standing up for what's right can shift the course of history. As for Ms. Williams, she continued to teach, her impact growing with every lesson, and the shadowy figure in the back of the room. They never revealed themselves, but their presence remained a reminder that the fight for change was never fully over. The story of a Black teacher who changed a town would be remembered, but it was the students who had truly made it their own.